Okay, do you all have your streams up and
Yes.
Yes. Great. We'll start in 3, 2, 1, play. I'm with Midge on this one personally, with the art being better in the tiny room.
Abstract art is my favorite, but these paintings aren't speaking to me at all.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of abstract art, but I like it to be. I don't. Just like more feeling and less random shapes or whatever. I love this character.
This is my favorite scene of the entire series.
It is a really great scene. I love that he kills the mood. This is a good scene too. The poor rabbi.
I love how that ends. Did you all reach the ending?
Yeah, tits up.
Yeah, I love tits up. I love the tits up.
I love their little friendship. So, what did you think of this episode? I feel like it's quite an important one with it being a year since basically how it started.
And the funny thing is, I was just looking up the meaning again of tits up, and tits up is actually used to mean to fail or to be inoperative or to be broken, and it was a mention of it from World War II and the behavior of airplanes' attitude indicators, which turn upside down when faulty and display a W resembling a pair of breasts. And there's no real evidence to support this speculation, but it seems more likely that the phrase is just vulgar alternative to the earlier belly up, which was the same meaning.
Oh,
So
I didn't know it came from that. That's cool.
and I thought that was kind of interesting. But tits up, they like I always thought it was tits up, good luck in your performance. But I was just reading that it's actually meaning, the opposite meaning. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah, my grandpa used to use that phrase liberally when things were like messed up.
We use that phrase in the UK like quite commonly, like things are going tits up.
Yes, exactly. And my grandfather was a vet. He wasn't in the Air Force though.
Ah,
I don't know
interesting.
I don't know where he picked it up, but he used it all the time. But the way Susie uses it, I always took it the way Nancy took it.
Yeah, that's how I think they mean it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
But I just had to look it up because I remember it meaning something else. That's why I just had
yeah.
to. Because I like the tits up, good luck, break a leg kind of
Yeah.
connotation.
I have a t-shirt that says tits up on it. It's in the Maisel font with the little like starbursts around it. It's super
Oh,
cute.
that's awesome.
I need to find that one.
We used to sell them. I'm not sure they're up on our website now though.
Did you like Zachary Levi this episode?
Oh, I did very much so. I mean, he could be a vacuum cleaner salesman in a movie and I would just be over the moon. I am so in love with him.
I love how he does
But
the old-fashioned kisses where he like grabs hold of his shoulders. I think that's
oh
very,
yes.
very good.
I felt like this was an important episode for him. We learned a little bit more about him
Yeah, like
and
his
he was
interests and stuff.
yeah, his interest in art and that he has a bench in his hallway and we got to see him a little vulnerable, I think, because he was quite uncomfortable approaching an artist he admires and he was a little uncomfortable with how well she handled those situations with Declan.
Yeah, he's like trying to figure out how to deal with it being so independent.
Yes. And he's such a educated, successful man that it was, I think, good to see his vulnerability. And even though they are so different and she is so independent, and you wouldn't think for a man in his position with his career that a woman like her would be attractive to him, but she is. And they seem to suit each other very well.
Yeah, I think she's like a bit of an enigma for him. He finds it exciting.
Yes.
What about, did you like that we didn't ever get to see I can't remember his name, the artist painting that they were talking about?
Oh, yes. I love that. And I fully and completely understand why he does not sell his art. When I was in college, I sold one piece. And I had offers, I had gallery showings, many of them. I had offers at every showing, like decent offers. I sold one piece, and that is the only piece I've ever sold. If I'm creating it for myself, like he said,
Yeah.
I painted that for myself, I cannot sell it. But if I have a client that wants me to do a commission and I'm not emotionally invested in it and I didn't create it for myself, it's super easy to sell it. And all the pieces I did in college, I still have them. I don't have them hanging now, but they're all stored. They're all crated. I don't think I will ever sell them. But the triptych I sold, it was 3 paintings that went together. I did it, but in the end, I didn't have any emotional attachment to it. I just did it and I sold it and let it go. And it was easy because I wasn't attached to it in any way.
Yeah,
So I
so
get
you
it.
don't like regret it when you're not attached to it.
No, no, I can just let it go. But his scene when he's talking about that painting, it is so beautiful. And he did ruin it with
Yeah.
his schmarmy comments,
I think he did
but
that on purpose because he got a bit too deep.
he did. He was vulnerable. He showed her his vulnerable side and he was emotional and he had to take it back. Like, you know.
Yeah. I like seeing Susie's family in this episode as well. It's nice to see. Like, never thought until that point about Susie having a family. I don't.
It explains so much about her. It is so great. I love her family. They crack me up. And now we know why Susie is the way she is.
So
Yeah,
did you
definitely.
recognize her sister?
Yeah, from Gilmore Girls. She looks a
Yes.
lot different though.
She was Francine, but yes.
Yeah, she's. It's nice that she plays like a completely different character though.
To go look up how old she was, and I'm like, and then I remember she was old to play Francine.
Oh, yes. She
Because
was.
she was born in, she's like 46 now, and she was like, I guess 25 when she was playing Francine, who
Wow, I
was a
didn't
high
realize
schooler.
that.
Yeah, I just looked up her age. She's young, she's older, she's a little younger than Alex. But so I had to Google her age because I'm like, wait, what? And it's just like, yeah. So she's yeah. That was kind of interesting to me too. But like a lot of them were older in their 20s playing high school students anyway in Gilmore. But
Yeah, Liza was in her 20s. She's
right,
44 now. So,
and so was Keiko and yeah.
yeah.
I think Keiko. They always say Keiko was closer in age to Lauren Graham than Alexis Bledel. But I find that kind of interesting. And I don't remember if Tessie is supposed to be older than Alex in this show. I can't remember if she's older sister or younger sister.
I'm not sure. I don't know if they said or.
I just assumed that Susie was the youngest of the three. I don't know why.
Because she was always standing 3 feet away from everybody else.
Yeah, and in one photo, you can kind of see the outline of the bodies. It looked like she was the littlest because the person standing 3 feet away was quite small. But she is a very small person, so
True.
who knows?
I love the Yom Kippur scene, the sending Zelda to and from the table with the food.
And the behavior of all of those people
I
is
know.
so funny because I truly believe their lack of food has just dumbed them down and they're just rabidly hungry. That whole scene just cracks me up.
Yeah, it's a good one. And it was such like a silly time for her to decide to like bring that out instead of doing it once they were full and happy.
Yes. And the rabbi, that rabbi is never going to come to their house again. There's no
No.
chance they will ever score the rabbi again. He's gonna run as soon as he sees Rose.
Um, I can't remember his brother's. Excuse me, Felix. Her brother's wife's name, but her like convert enthusiasm in every scene just like cracks.
Oh, yes. She's a better Jew than any of them. I
Yeah,
mean, she is trying super hard to prove herself.
I know a few converts who are like a lot more like devout. I don't know if that's like the term, but they're like a lot more um excited about the scriptures and stuff, I guess, than my friends who weren't born and raised Jewish.
I only personally have ever met one Jewish person, and one of his parents is Catholic and one's Jewish, so they're not all in with either religion and they flip flop back and forth every year. Like one year they do Hanukkah and the next year they do Christmas, but he's the only one I've ever met in person here in Oklahoma who was Jewish. I don't think we have a large Jewish community in this state. Not that I know of.
Yeah, we don't really have a large Jewish community where I live, except for in London. Most of my Jewish friends are online, but I've known them for many years. Um, I think they're pretty much all American, to be honest.
We discussed this earlier, very curious about it in concerns in regards to Oklahoma. And I did Google synagogues, and we have quite a few synagogues, but I'm like, I've never met anybody.
I think a lot of the time, like if the Orthodox Jews, their communities are quite insular, so they stay in their own like parts of town and go to their own Hebrew schools and things like that.
We do not have any Hebrew schools that I'm aware of. We have a large concentration of Catholics in the metro areas in my state. In the small rural areas, there's hardly any, but I think most people here are Baptist, Southern Baptist.
I did like the synagogue scene and the praying and all of the Hebrew that they used was fairly accurate. Actually, I don't know any different. and the call to worship, well, the shofar blowing at the end is true, and that is the last thing that we do in synagogue on Yom Kippur. So, and there's usually more shofar calls. Like there's always like a word to Kiyah Gadola or whatever. That's the last one, and that's why they showed that one. But there's usually like 6 to 9 calls each time we hear the shofar during the service on Yom Kippur. And so I liked hearing that, and then everybody running out because that is kind of true to form also. Because at the end of Yom Kippur, you just want to go home and get to dinner
Yeah.
because you're hungry.
So
I
is Amy
always
Sherman Palladino Jewish then, or
But the thing is, and yes, children are allowed to eat, and if you are older or sick or whatever, you are allowed to not fast or eat. But you don't really eat. I'm surprised that they were like giving him food in temple. But I guess he is a kid. But we would give them food like not in the actual sanctuary, but in the hallway or in the babysitting room or in the wherever
yeah?
the daycare room, not necessarily in the shul itself.
I think
But
Moish was kind of annoyed, or Abe as well, like about Ethan being given food there.
he was
um
eating all the chocolate.
Amy is Jewish. Her father was Jewish, and her mother was Southern Baptist. So,
So would she have been raised like to go, well, like with all the Jewish holidays and stuff? I thought
she
that it was
she has
matrilineal
stated
then.
previously that she was raised Jewish.
So she didn't have to do much research then.
No. I'm assuming her mother may or may not have converted. I don't know how serious that is with the Jewish religion. I know my husband comes from a very devout Irish Catholic family, and I had to convert to Catholicism before we got married. Or we still would have gotten married, but just to make the family happy and to be fully accepted. And so all of that was good with them. I converted to please them. But I don't
With
know.
I think a lot of partners of Jewish people, like with like my friends and stuff that I've noticed, a lot of them have wanted to convert but haven't been required to. Like, I don't think they're pressured to convert if they don't want to, because it's quite a difficult process. Maybe Nancy would know.
What was the question? I was looking at work for a minute.
If there's like pressure to convert if you marry into a Jewish family.
The if you're wait, I'm losing you. If you're converting,
Oh,
If you're marrying, like, if one person's Jewish and the other's not, is there pressure for the person who's not to convert
I think
before the marriage occurs?
I think there's like differences. I mean, it depends on the family itself, and what. It's not usually pressure from anybody, but usually the family, like for status. So sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. So it depends on the family itself, if that makes any sense. There usually isn't any real pressure, but like unless like their family is very devout in itself, so then they would want their children, grandchildren to be raised Jewish. So I think it's more of a family preference than it is anything else. Some temples may or may not recognize the non-Jewish spouse if they don't convert. If they convert, they may recognize it. So it might also be, again, there's no real pressure for them to convert, just as part of being seen and heard and being able to do things Jewishly with their family. Like some synagogues won't allow non-Jews up on the bima, which is the stage, per se, unless you're Jewish. They're not allowed to have an aliyah, which means they are called to the Torah to say a blessing before the Torah readings. So unless that other person wants that, there's no real pressure there, except if like your child is becoming bar mitzvah and the family wants to come up and have an aliyah. Some synagogues will not let that non-Jew come up unless they've been converted. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That was very interesting.
Yeah, like when my husband and I got married, I converted because there was tons of pressure from his family. But he has friends that he's gone to Catholic school with his entire life, and their spouses didn't have to convert because I guess it wasn't, their families aren't as devout as my husband's family. And one of the things his mother kept telling me, you have to convert because you won't be recognized by the church.
Right,
And it
like
was like,
there's like
ugh.
I belong to a synagogue that's very reform, and we started from the ground up. We have probably 80% of the families, or it used to be, I don't know what it is now, were mixed interfaith families, some of which converted, some of which didn't. We do, we did at one point, I think this is still in effect, but we did not like allow the non-Jews to be part of our board, at one point because of just if we're making Jewish decisions, we wanted the Jews to make the decisions, not necessarily non-Jews, because some things are more left, better left to know what we want in a Jewish synagogue. Um, and we do allow non-Jews to participate in our Torah service, um, as if they were Jewish. We do allow them to hold the Torah, and we do allow them to come up for the Aliyah with their spouse, like when their children are having B'nai Mitzvot. So we're very flexible when it comes to that, but there are certain things that we do hold back from if you do not convert, if that makes sense there too.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So
I'm gonna have to go now because I need to put my son to bed. But thank
I
you for
can
joining.
hear him.
Yeah, he's being a bit crazy right now.
It's bedtime.
don't forget to harvest, people.
Oh yeah, don't forget to harvest.
Diana.
Thank you for joining me, and I can leave the room open if you want to carry